This occurred not long after I turned 18 years old. My girlfriend had also just turned 18 a few days ago, which meant her parents had finally trusted her and I to be alone in the house while they went out for dinner. My girlfriend had always been a fan of horror films and creepy things in general. She loved reading creepypastas and watching dark and gory films such as Hostel and Saw. One evening, I was sitting with her while she finished watching the last few minutes of The Human Centipede. We both had a few drinks and I was about to go to bed, but she suggested we look for other horror films to watch online. Despite my tiredness, I obliged. A few minutes of searching on her laptop revealed all of her favorite online film sites had been taken down. That's when she suggested a chilling alternative. "Ever heard of the dark web?" she asked. I had heard whispers around school about it, but never took much interest. "Yeah, I have," I replied, trying to act brave. A smile of excitement appeared on her face. I could tell she was slightly drunk and in that sort of I don't care what happens mood. I decided to go to the kitchen to fetch her some water. When I came back, I noticed she had a site opened called SensorView. The site displayed the pictures of movie posters I had never seen before. I correctly assumed it was a site that sold banned horror films from other countries. All of them looked pretty unoriginal, nothing I hadn't seen before. All except for one. The one my girlfriend was hovering the mouse clicker over. The movie was called The Visiting. The display picture was simply a white background with The Visiting written in Arial black font. We were both fascinated as to what it was. I took out my iPhone and searched for the plot of the film, yet I found nothing. Just a few stupid YouTube videos and irrelevant forums. However, when I looked back up from my phone, I caught a glimpse of my girlfriend typing in her name and address into various boxes on a page titled Order Details. Before, to my horror, she clicked the submit button. I was caught in a state of anger and shock. I manically shouted at her, explaining how dangerous it was dispersing her personal details into such a fucked up place as the dark web. I could see my attempts to correct her were futile, as the alcohol was hitting her hard and she was not paying attention whatsoever. Frustrated, I went to bed deciding to discuss it with her the next morning. The next morning she seemed to have little regret over her actions. She spent the morning explaining how she was curious and she was in no danger. She even commented that the experience would be fun. However, I wasn't convinced. She told me not to tell her parents, fearing they would not trust her to be alone in the house again. I promised not to say anything and headed back home. 3 days later, I was visiting her house again. Her parents had gone to meet with some friends from work for a drink and we were watching The Exorcist on DVD. During a particularly non-eventful part of the film, my girlfriend began joking about how horrified I looked a few days ago when we were discussing the dark web. She said she had only received a fairly professional-looking email confirming the order and nothing else. I began to yield to her argument, perhaps I was overreacting. It was merely seconds after our conversation finished that an aggressive knock came from the door. It sounded like it was from 2 doors, but I dismissed this as an echo. I began to look concerned, while my girlfriend began laughing once again at the look of terror on my face. I put on a fake smile as I walked towards the door. It erased clean from my face when I saw who stood outside. A tall, stocky man wearing a ski mask and dark clothes stood at the front door wielding a hammer. I was about to call out to my girlfriend to call the police, when a blood-curdling scream echoed through the house. I raced back into the room to see my girlfriend pointing at the window facing the garden. An identical man stood at the window, only he was holding a small bat. I grabbed my girlfriend's hand and sprinted up the stairs. We hid in the master bedroom while I called the police on my mobile, who told me they would be there as soon as possible. As I finished the call, I heard one of the doors smash and loud rapid footsteps heading up the stairs. They were in the house. Without thinking, I pushed the window open and told my girlfriend to jump, run and not to look back. She jumped and landed safely onto the grassy garden below. I was about to follow, but hesitated, wondering if I could put up a fight and in doing so, allow my girlfriend more time to escape. It was then I heard a deep aggressive voice just outside the room. The man shouted something in a foreign language whilst I heard laughs from two other men outside. All bravery evaporated and I jumped, landing harshly on my ankle. The adrenaline racing around my body allowed me to power through the pain and I eventually caught up to my girlfriend. We were running for what seemed like hours, but in reality was most likely 10 minutes. We ended up next to the local park, a safe distance away from the house. My girlfriend began sobbing and I comforted her, trying to avoid my own desire to break down. It was not long after that when the police called me on my mobile. They were at the house and as far as they could tell, the attackers were gone. After taking a few minutes to compose ourselves, my girlfriend and I made our way back. There were 3 police officers at the house. One was examining each room for any damage or evidence left by the men. One was comforting my girlfriend, while the other asked me questions. The shock was clouding my memory. I was only able to tell them a few details about their clothing and the fact they spoke in an Eastern European language. My girlfriend handed over her phone and computer for the police to investigate and they left. They advised us tell the homeowners of the situation, lock up and suggested that everyone spend the rest evening with friends or a relative. So we both spent the night at my parents' house, while my girlfriend's parents stayed with friends. I remember my girlfriend crying over the phone while telling them about the situation. They were furious. A few days later the police visited my girlfriend. It was by luck that I was at her house that afternoon. Their investigations had led them to some disturbing findings. It turned out the visiting was a nickname locals in a small Polish town gave to a number of brutal murders that occurred in the 90s in the local area. The murders were committed by an unknown gang and were initially dismissed as home invasions gone wrong. All the victims were bludgeoned to death in their homes, although nothing of value was taken from the house. It was only 2 years after the murders began that a family survived an attack by the gang. The husband was able to give the Polish police a few details of the attackers, but all that he revealed was that they wore ski masks, wielded blunt objects and one had a video camera. However, the crucial evidence was that one of the attackers had dropped a backpack, containing 1 blank videotape and 3 other tapes with content on them. The 3 tapes showed the horrific murders of the other victims of the attackers. The police came to a shocking conclusion that these men were creating snuff films to be sold to whatever sickos paid enough for them. A nationwide manhunt began, but after years of investigation, nothing was found. I remember feeling incredibly cold as the police told me their findings. They went on to tell me that the men most likely fled Poland during the police search and could possibly have entered the UK as workers when Poland joined the European Union. The only thing they knew for certain was that these men were operating once again, decades after their last murder, and they were using the dark web as a way of deciding on their next victims. The police told my girlfriend's family to move in with a relative while the investigation was ongoing. It was not long after that when my girlfriend broke up with me by her parents' wishes. I assumed her parents suspected me of forcing her into using the dark web. My girlfriend discovered later that various documents containing her information had been taken from the house. I'm not allowed to see her, but our parents still speak. From what they tell me, her mental state has become incredibly fragile. It broke my heart to hear this. I can safely say the police will never find the attackers using the information I gave. Which means they will most likely strike again. I can only hope the next time they do, it will lead to those bastards ending up behind bars, and not the creation of another tape to add to their collection. Be safe and avoid the dark web. In order to give context to this post, let me explain who I am and why the fuck I am bothering sharing this information. 22-year-old male, just finished my master's at university. I was about 12 when I was given permission to start using my dad's spare laptop, since his work gave him a new one every couple of years and he thought I could use the experience of getting used to tech early on. When I got into high school I got word from a group of stoners. Why the fuck they were talking about it? Hell if I know that people were accessing restricted parts of the internet which held everyone's information. I went ahead and did some more digging online and found out about the dark web, what most of you know as the deep web, finding proxy sites as well as hacks that you could use via command prompts to mask your IP address and basically walk through a lot of locked doors. I spent the better part of my late teens doing this kind of stuff online, using a few online forums like Reddit, most of the time, to talk with people who were basically doing the same shit as me. I didn't have many friends offline, so yeah, online was the place for me and I got pretty good at blending in. I had 3 aliases which I used, but only a close online friend of mine knew that they were all me. Nathan was my main link to the dark web, since he somehow spent more time on it than I did, even when the only thing I did other than ghosting with him was playing Halo with him on my friends list. What I liked about him is that neither of us mentioned our last names or any real information, even though we both could have looked it up at any time and found pretty much whatever we wanted about the other person. That being said, I trusted Nathan more than almost anyone and he knows more about this story than I'll be willing to admit on here. During UNI I roomed with a local dealer who, unknown to the education board that expelled him, worked for me. It was fucking easy to order narcotics online like MDMA and X if you knew where to look. I even had them shipped to my dorm room's local PO box at one time without anyone being any the fucking wiser. I'd get the drugs online. My former friend would then use his real-life connections to sell them since I didn't really have any of my own. This was around the time I felt that I held all the cards and no one could touch me if they couldn't track my IP. I was in the second year of my biome course when I got into the stupid shit. Scumbag pieces of shit would be sharing snuff videos online that would make even the most messed up pornography you've laid eyes upon look like fucking white bread. This was why I only used links that I either found myself or more often the ones that Nathan gave me. We would spend days, literally days, just marveling at all of the crazy shit which people could get away with. Yeah. The government had shut down the main sites like Silk Road and Mad Onion, but those are like the only ones that idiots online seem to ever take notice of. Other hackers would message me on forums asking for sites to get weed and other drugs from, which was as simple as pointing in a fucking direction. The university claimed to monitor internet traffic to stop people from doing freaky shit online after they heard people were hacking student accounts and ruining online schedules, but I guarantee you that they did absolutely nothing to people who were actually doing it. Note, I'm not confessing to having done these acts, I just know exactly which individuals did. By third year I had made enough money to have a long screen setup of my own which made decrypting site details a lot quicker for me, since I could actually read 200 bars without having to scroll through the tab, and I actually had gotten pretty good at it. I had been delving around some messed up sites, and to be honest I'd even talked in chat rooms to some of the admins in charge of them. You'd be surprised how normal a child pornography site owner would seem if you didn't know that he also had a day job. I got more curious though. Fucking stupid of me. After nearly 10 years of seamlessly making my way around the dark web, deep web is more of a pleb term if you're talking with more experienced users. Even today, I joined Nathan as well as a few others in a chat room just fucking about and sharing some screwed up sites. Might sound weird, but for me it's a pretty everyday thing to do. Nathan and another friend were talking about some site that no one had managed to get past the encryption to apart from one other person who's even more of a no-life than me. The rest of us are pretty sure he's autistic or some shit because the site he shared with us was arguably the most vile thing I've ever laid eyes upon. For those of you still with me, this is why I'm posting this here. This site is the most cancerous and revolting sector from the darkest part of the dark web. It is a scar that I bear to this day, and it is one that I will never, ever forget. I'll warn readers again. This is not for the faint-hearted and something that even the most emotionally numb people will not be able to deal with. I won't share the site URL since I don't want this post being taken down. Nor do I want anyone even giving it the slightest bit of publicity aside what I have to say here. That being said, it did have a subheading in the HTML. That I'll leave other people like me to have a look at if they want to. Most people referred to it as cold body. The autistic dude who was in the chat room earlier gave Nathan and I an encrypted URL for us, but he was too fucking giddy about getting through to the site himself to send us an encryption, so Nathan and I had to manually go through the whole process ourselves. We tried for hours. Nathan and I had been doing this for the entirety of our adult lives, yet we'd never seen code like this before. Come to think of it, I doubt that the other guy in the chat cracked this by himself. Nathan and I both called it a night. So I left the command prompt open and went outside to smoke a joint. Nathan remained on the chat so we could play Anvil, a Russian crack of Halo for PC, but when I got back his microphone was muted for some reason. For people like us who had nothing to hide from each other, we almost never muted our mics. I wait a few minutes, thinking maybe he's jacking off or maybe gone to get something. Nothing. I don't think much of it, my brain too occupied with the cannabinoids flowing through my bloodstream. I sat down and took another look through the code, thinking there was something I missed. I did. The code was completely different. Completely unencrypted. I simply launched the URL and my PC worked for a while, until finally opening up about 20 windows across my two monitors, all of them scrambling code through a debugger that I had installed. Even with 32 gigabytes of RAM, my computer was making more noise than it ever did doing this kind of stuff. I thought to myself, shit, I'm gonna have to OC my shit in the BIOS if I was going to have a shot of getting through, and I was not feeling up for it after smoking too much. I get ready to hard reset before my monitors turn off and back on one at a time. This was when I started getting a bit paranoid and was thinking about just letting it go. I fucking wish that was what I did. The windows were almost all gone, only 4 were still there and 2 of them were normal deep web sites that the admin probably used to relay the IP address through. First site that I had seen do that. All of the text was a dark red and extremely primitive for a site that I thought would be at least a little bit more impressive considering its security. The main center window had only a small amount of text on the screen. If you have made IT this far, you know what you are in for. If you still don't, you don't belong here. Even though I was feeling mellow, The text and sheer awe of what I was getting myself into pierced me with fear. A simple YN prompt popped up in the window. I accepted, ready for whatever awaited me on the other side. A chat room window came to life in the second remaining window. I was wondering what it was for, perhaps another IP relay or a shadow app that hid the true nature of the site behind it. It simply stated /insert name as well as an optional password that I'm still not sure what was for. The fact that people might have accounts to this kind of site, looking back on it, is fucked up. I used my most recent alias, Diablo_hash, the hash SR censored for obvious reasons. A couple more scrolls of red text flew up the window and then it opened up into an actual sort of chat room like you'd see on Omegle or some shit, except with no ads or color or anything besides the dark red text. The chat was a bit more advanced than the first window, which was now frozen and wasn't responding to any console commands I was using on it. I have to say, the feeling of finding this site in the first place felt pretty awesome. I couldn't wait to tell Nathan. That was until the chat window popped up with names. One that I recognized was his, using one of his aliases as well. I'd say about 3 dozen people were in the chat room, no names that I can remember. And even if I did, I wouldn't dare reveal them. Not after this. I tried calling Nathan on my phone but he obviously wasn't picking up. We were so fucked. It was stupid of us to delve this deep without even knowing what we got ourselves into. Users definitely had met before, as they immediately started posting messages to the window as me and Nathan remained silent. As they were casually talking about stuff, I was starting to calm down a bit. Maybe this was just a stupid exclusive cult website that talked about organizing deals or other dumb shit that I've found in the past. It all seemed so normal, so why all the obscurity? The first window, still blank and unresponsive, suddenly began loading up a video file of some sort. A snuff video, perhaps? It would make sense to hide one but not this extensively, and the chat room didn't make much sense. I wish this stuff had been going through my head at the time if I wasn't retarded enough to get stoned before going through with this shit. I felt tempted to ask the other users what the video was about, but I was afraid that might give me away as someone who's not supposed to be there. Nathan hadn't said anything either, so I wasn't going to risk doing something suspicious like that. I got the guts to ask, what are we all here for then, you cunts? Trying to sound as eccentric and dim-witted as I could. I didn't get a response from them. As a matter of fact, no one said another word. Nathan stayed quiet, but I assumed that he noticed me in the chat as well now that I'd posted. The video had stopped loading and had begun playing. Some more messages from the other users sharing their anticipation as footage of a dark grey basement somewhere took shape on the screen. The resolution for the video was pretty awful at first but trended pretty well after about 30 seconds. I was scared shitless. No one else was in the house that I share with my roommates. Most had left for summer vacation and I didn't head home for another 2 weeks. I was alone in the dark with little else but the ambient sound of whatever was happening behind the camera in the video. It stays like this for about 4 or 5 minutes. I spent every second of it staring at the screen, waiting for something to happen. Finally, a dude steps onto the screen holding up a whiteboard with foreign letters on it as well as the words "cold body" underneath. The guy was fucking ominous to look at, pretty overweight and what only could be described as a motorbiker's beard. The man spoke. I had no idea what he was saying at first. He was speaking in Chinese I think, but I don't really know him, not a fucking linguist. Luckily for Nathan and I, the man had another person beside him who spoke some broken English. "Hello users, welcome Cold Body Show," I think he said. I was honestly more interested than scared at this point. This video looked like it could be something worth showing to the others. That thought never crossed my mind again. The man with the broken English bursts into tears and sobs out of nowhere. He sobs in front of the camera and jerks around in what I can only guess was desperation. The man holding the sign yells at the guy in Chinese before another man enters the frame and puts a gun to his head. Before I could even realize it was a gun, the man fired. He didn't stop there. Pressing the barrel of the gun against the dead man's temple, he fired again and again, each shot spraying blood and what I guess were pieces of the man's skull all over the place. Okay, so a shock video, not much out of the ordinary here. That was when I stared at the chat window again. The users were talking about what they should do next. Users were all typing in different languages, but almost of the English ones that I read said shoot him again. I realized then that I wasn't watching some shock video or stupid snuff film that the admins had hid behind a wall of proxies. This was a live stream. I was watching a live stream of people being murdered in front of me. We all were. I type into the chat, "You sick fucks, and what the fuck are you guys doing?" But the texts weren't responded to because so many people were spamming the chat with foreign text I couldn't read. Another person is brought out in front of the camera, this time already sobbing and trying to break free of the ropes that had been bound around her ankles and wrists. She was bare naked and covered in bruises and cuts. I didn't do anything but wait for the inevitable. The man shot her in the head and watched her body fall limp to the floor. People in the chat cheered and asked for more. Someone picks up the camera and positions it in a different direction towards a metal table covered with some sort of bin liner. The woman's body was dragged by the hair into frame and placed on the table. What happened next? I don't think the world should know. I am not kidding. This is your final warning. The body was slumped on the table like a surgeon would do before operating on a person. Some more people, wearing red and black ski masks, went up to the body holding items varying from kitchen knives to cordless drills. I couldn't watch without feeling physically sick to my stomach. The men tore her apart limb from limb, stabbing at her torso and cutting her open. I take another glance to see one of the men was having sex with the mutilated corpse. I almost immediately retch and almost vomit over my keyboard, but I gain control of myself before that happens. My heart was beating like crazy. The whole situation was so fucked and I was in way over my fucking head. By the time the men were finished, there was a literal stump of a human being left. Not that you could fucking call that human anymore. Her head was literally torn off the neck and stuffed into her body cavity along with one of her arms. If it weren't for the other weird sights that I had seen before this, I might not have stayed as long as I did. 3 more people were brought onto the screen, all of them screaming for their lives and trying to escape. One of them is shot in the leg. The others stand there shaking in place, trying not to scream again. The man holding the sign walks up to the lens of the camera and stares into it. I see his black eyes, blood spattered across his face. I breathe faster and I actually had to look away. It was like he was staring right at me. He says something else in a foreign language, probably the same one as before. When he stops speaking, the chat window does the same. Hardly a single other post. Just a chat window awaiting some response. About 20 seconds passes of him just staring into the camera after speaking. Nothing happens at first. The chat then mentioned me and Nathan by our usernames. More of them spam our names in posts that take over the scrolling message board. As soon as they mentioned our aliases, I started freaking out. I try to close the black windows, but every time that I try, the window says that the application is not responding. The live stream continues, the man staring at me and the messages prompting me to say something. One of the few comments in proper English pops up. He's asking us to choose which one to kill first. I freeze for about 5 seconds before unplugging my computer from the wall. I didn't care about anything anymore. I just wanted to leave the site and never come back. I sat there with a blank screen in front of me for a bit before pacing around the kitchen. I was done with it. I didn't sleep at all. I was too traumatized to even think about resting after what I had seen. At the time of this happening, I was thinking about reporting the site to the police, but I of all people know that they can't do anything to stop this. To think that more of these sites could exist, that more people are getting gunned down and mutilated for entertainment, it's something that I can't fucking think about. Fuck. I spent 2 days talking to some close friends about this stuff, though I left out all the details and just said I'd seen something disturbing online. They all know what I do in my free time, so they didn't think much of it since I'd mentioned snuff films and messed up sites before. They didn't know what Nathan and I had seen. I mustered up the courage to turn on my PC again, and I was fucking relieved to see no sign of any viruses and most of all no black windows scattered on my desktop. I immediately go to check if Nathan had left me any messages on Raddot. I had several messages from him with a few files attached to the second. I was hoping to talk this whole ordeal through with him, but the files immediately caught my eye. The fucking attachments were pictures of me, stolen from my Facebook and email. Pictures of my old school, university and even my friends here. The messages after were my addresses, emails, online aliases and even the names of my family members. My IP address was posted to the bottom and I realized how fucked I am. The last picture of me and my old girlfriend, with her IP address and details pasted on top of the picture. There's no fucking way that they tracked me down. I take a few minutes to pull myself together before writing back, "What the fuck happened? Who are you?" I didn't get a response and I still haven't to this day. He has all of my details. He knows everything about me and my family, and I don't even know what else. I still don't know what has happened to him since I left that live stream. I can only pray that the information he has doesn't fall into the hands of those murderous, insane motherfuckers who killed and desecrated dozens of people on the darkest part of the internet. I can't let them find me or those who I care about. I will never go back to that part of the internet again ever. It's not fucking safe for me or you or anyone. The police can't find them, but they can find you. Don't try and find the site. Don't try and report the site. They will do to you what they did to me, and if you think that they won't find you, then remember that I was invisible. Do you want to take the chance that they won't find someone like you? Don't go onto the deep web and, for the sake of your humanity, never seek out the people who are behind this. They'll only find you too. So, depending on how much you actually use the internet, you might know of something called the deep web. Pretty much, you can use a proxy service like Tor or I2P and find all kinds of stuff you wouldn't normally find, like places to buy guns or drugs. Anyways, I was browsing a Ask Reddit thread about weird stuff on the internet and a few people mentioned onion sites. Interested by all this, I decided to download Tor and look up a list of sites to visit. I found one site advertised as a black market. I thought this was pretty cool, so I decided to browse around. People were selling meth, guns, hits on other people, and stolen goods. I was about to leave, but then a post titled "Free for You" caught my eye. I clicked on the thread and all the post said was lots of fun for you. Free DL enjoy. Below the text was a link to a file called fun.zip. Now, keep in mind, it was like 2 AM and I was really bored, so I downloaded the file and ran it through a few virus scans. Nothing came up, so I decided to unarchive it. Inside were a lot of videos and pictures. I decided to click on one called Manaman.of and watched it. Not too much to it, just some guy in a banana suit for 4 minutes. I was interested enough to keep on going, so I clicked on a picture called Steven.jpg. It was just some guy sitting at his computer looking bored. I opened a few more pictures with people's names on them, and they were almost all the same. Just someone sitting at their computer looking bored or doing something like carrying books or walking into the store. I was getting a bit creeped out, but I decided to press on. I watched a couple more videos. One was some kids walking to school. Another was a man reading the newspaper on his couch. I'll skip to the more interesting ones now. Goodnight.of it. 2 boys, maybe like 7 or 8, are brushing their teeth in their pajamas. They seem completely unaware of the camera, as it is filmed from right beside them. They finish brushing and rush off to bed. For the next 9 hours it views them sleeping. Nothing else. Payment.of it. A middle-aged man is walking down a dimly lit street during the middle of the night. Again, this person is also completely unaware of the camera. He comes across a teenage girl and begins talking to her. The sound is muffled, but it must be bad due to the growing look of terror on the girl's face. She tries running but gets shoved into the wall by the man. He grabs her phone and backpack and runs off. The video goes on for 4 minutes of the girl sobbing in the street, then ends. Stolen.of it. A teenage couple is seen watching a football game at what is presumably their high school. The game ends and the crowds leave except for the couple who decides to remain at the bleachers. Once everyone leaves, the couple kisses a couple times and then the boyfriend whispers something into the girl's ear. She keeps saying no, but he keeps on saying come on and it will be fun. All of my friends have done it with their girlfriends. The girl tries to leave but is grabbed by the boy. At this point, everyone that was at the game has left and the field is mostly dark. The girl's boyfriend slams her against the back of the bleachers and takes off her pants. He begins to violently rape and beat her for the next 15 minutes. The girl has a blackened and a bloody nose and is sobbing on the ground. Her boyfriend begins to stomp on her head and kick her in the stomach. Some gurgling noises are heard from the girl, but after a couple more stomps they stop. Her head is completely stomped in, and her clothes are covered in blood. The dumps her body in a trash can behind the bleachers along with his clothes, puts on his uniform, and walks away. The camera points at the trash can for 15 minutes. Then the video ends. At this point I was completely freaked the fuck out and deleted the archive and decided to go to sleep. I fell asleep almost instantly, but didn't have any dreams at all. I went to school and didn't tell anyone what I had seen. Lots of people asked me why I looked so freaked out. I just said I was kind of on edge because I didn't sleep a lot last night. I was beginning to think that I had just had a nightmare and was talking things way too seriously. After lunch though I felt my phone vibrate. It was a text from a number listed as unknown saying you like? I tried to call but I always just got a busy signal. I figured it was just a wrong number and didn't let it bother me. Things were pretty normal for a few days until Thursday came around. I got another text from unknown, except this time it was a picture. It was a picture of me in my 3rd hour class. I instantly freaked out and went on a computer to try to find the post I saw Sunday night. I looked everywhere but the thread was nowhere to be found, and no one was talking about it. More pictures started rolling in. Some were of me, others were of my friends, family, and some people that I didn't even know. I went to the police and they said that they would try to trace the number, but they considered it low priority so it would take a couple of days. I texted all my friends asking me if they were playing some kind of fucked up joke on me, no answer. I tried calling them and it just went straight to voicemail. I decided I would just go home and look into my browser history to find the post, so I called my mom. Again, just straight to voicemail. Even though I live pretty far from the police station, I decided to run home like my life depended on it. I got home and turned on my computer and just saw one file, morefun.zip. With great fear I opened up the file and inside were pictures and videos of all my friends and family being tortured and mutilated. Images of my mum with her eyes ripped out and impaled on sharp metal rods. My friends with their jaws ripped off, fingers cut off and jammed into their eyes, and videos of them being burned alive. I was going to call the police but one more image caught my eye. It was entitled hello.jpg. Created about 15 seconds ago. It was me, looking at the images, with a man with blood-splattered clothes standing behind me with a camera. Smiling.